Director of Customer Success here at Pluralsight for EMEA. I've been in a customer success role or something similar for many, many years. My first CSM role was 2009 with some of the happy people on this call today. One positive thing about lockdown, well, there's sort of maybe a work one and a personal one. In terms of work, I think it's been just really lovely to connect with customers where they are and to see, you know, their children, hear their dog barking, whatever it might be. On a personal level, I've had my 25-year-old son home for both lockdowns, so having extra mummy moments, he'd be mortified to hear me say it, but it's really nice.
Good. Thanks for sharing. Allison, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Allison Skidmore. I'm based out of Singapore, originally from the US. Been living in Asia Pacific for the last 8 or 10 years. And I've worked in customer success at a variety of startups and corporates, currently at SAP, leading our global customer success team for the Customer Experience Cloud. And one of the positive things that has come out of lockdown is I have enjoyed not traveling for a change. I have been in the same place for over a year now, and I have made new friends and new hobbies and new routines, which has been lovely.
Thank you, Allison. Riccardo, tell us more about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Riccardo Composto. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager at Sitecore. I work with a large portfolio of large enterprises across Europe. So being Italian, some Italian customers, but also Portuguese, Switzerland, so a bit of everything. Before that, I spent 6 years at Adobe, coming from a startup, and then 1 year at Oracle. In terms of what's been great or good about lockdown, so apart from working in my spare time, I train for triathlon, and I am a father of one very energetic 3-year-old. So I guess spending more time with him and also be able to train without having to commute, that's been probably the best thing about lockdown.
Good. So there are good things. We can find good things.
Yeah, we can find them. We can definitely find them.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so let's dive in these topics, executive relationships. So the first question that comes to mind about this topic are, how do you engage with executives, and what would make them interested in having a conversation with CSM? So I know that we discussed that, and you have different approaches, which is great. So Riccardo, do you want to start with your approach to how you engage with exec?
Yeah, sure. So I found that actually, in terms to how to engage, sometimes being introduced is probably the best option. And I found that in my career, I found that some large enterprises have strategic partnership team, and they're actually very good at helping you getting connected to executives, because of course they have their own agenda and they want to make sure that they get visibility and they provide visibility of how the relationship with the vendor is going. So getting connected to the exec through the strategic partnership team would be my first recommendation. Of course, that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, it's been more occasional than the norm. So I guess sometimes the standard email is necessary. And in that case, I really recommend to make sure that, I mean, we all know that executives don't have a lot of time, right? So they probably do a job that requires more than 24 hours a day. So I normally try to follow 3 principles, which are make it easy for the executive to be reachable and to connect with you. Also, explain why you want to connect with them. So I always suggest to cut all the chat and all the fluff. Just go to the point. Try to explain what is that you want to communicate to the executive, what is that you want to achieve when you connect with him, and also make it remarkable. So explain why them, make sure there is not a standard email, make sure that you explain why you want to connect, why them specifically, and try to if you can, to research about that specific person, read books, or without being a stalker, try to understand what they are and what they do in the spare time, so that you have also point of conversations. I think one thing that I want to stress on is when you meet them is really explain to them how you or the CS team can add value to the relationship. And when I say add value, I mean, they have their own agenda. They want to make sure that they show maybe to the rest of the business that they are making progress with Sitecore or with SAP or whoever. So make sure that you can help them understand that you can help, that you are a facilitator, potentially being able to connect them with other executives in your business and facilitate other connections, as well as helping them realize and achieving their objectives. So I say adding value, making sure that they trust you, and really make the connection remarkable, not just like a standard meeting that they could have with any other people in the industry.
Good. Thanks, Riccardo. Allison, would you like to add something? What's your approach to this topic?
So for CSMs, we talk a lot about how we build the executive relationship with the customer. And I think what's also important in the CSM role is how we build the executive relationship with our internal stakeholders within our own company. Whether it's your head of product, your MD, your CFO, your sales leader, these relationships I think are very important because one, they become the training ground for how you want to engage with your customer executives. They also help facilitate intros and relationships where these executives might already have some more senior relationships in with your customer. And if they trust you and they trust the way you interact, the way you present yourself, communicate, I find that they're more willing to help facilitate those introductions. One book that I really recommend, it's a short read. It's called Leading Executive Conversations. I'll drop it in the chat pod. And in Leading Executive Conversations, they talk about 5 or 6 basic rules. And one of the rules that I remember that stands out to me is when you go in to have the meeting with the executive, have an ask. Ask them for something that no one else can give you, whether it's signing off on the reference for a customer or internally, whether it's approving the budget for something. They want to know that there was a purpose for the reason you took their time or you got their time. And I think the other thing is they call out in the book, and I think this is so true, whatever your time is for the meeting, 30 minutes, prepare that you have just 1/10 of that or 20% of that. Prepare that they are going to come in late to the meeting, they're going to leave early, and prepare that the 5 slide decks, they're the 5 slides you had in your deck, that you will only present 1. So I always make sure that on the first slide, you're able to tell your entire business case on 1 slide. And I think one of the frameworks I often use is situation, complication, recommendation. So, hey, executive, the reason I'm having this meeting today is we have a situation with customer X. The complication is that we're going to lose them and their entire $1 million renewal if we don't do something. My recommendation is, can you approve professional services to do X, Y, and Z to get them back on track so we can save the account? That's why I have this meeting booked with you today. And then you've got all the additional slides for the further information. So those would be some of my recommendations around executive communication.
Excellent. Lots of great takeaways. Thanks, Allison. Shirley, your turn.
Yeah, so and I totally agree with Allison. I think it's great to have that internal stakeholder relationship because it does help you prepare for the conversation, and obviously EBRs as well, as Riccardo said. But we also have an executive engagement program here at Pluralsight. So it's kind of combining the relationship with our executives and with the customer executives. So it's a regular contact between our execs and the customer's execs. So it's really a kind of peer-to-peer type of conversation. And we do that with not obviously every single customer, but our largest customers. And it means that they are then connecting with them on a regular basis and hearing, their challenges, their concerns, and then having an influence on our business as well. We also have lots of marketing events. I think it's not just about meetings. We're actually doing a leadership summit at the beginning of March. So that's virtually this year, obviously. But, really using sessions that are key to executive business. We are very focused on tech leaders. So having content that is very critical to their day-to-day business is important. And during that leadership summit, we have things like executive briefings. So again, it's an opportunity to connect execs with execs, for executives to hear from executives in other customers. So that's, again, that peer-to-peer type of conversation. And throughout the year, we also have roundtables, right? So we get small groups of our customers' executives together. It's usually led by, again, one of our executives, but again, it's really that sort of sharing their challenges, sharing thought leadership, and so on as well. And then lastly, we've got a customer advisory board. So that really is, again, helping the customers bring their perspective on, you know, how Pluralsight can help solve their problems. So lots and lots of different ways other than just the EBR.
Mm-hmm. And so, Shirley, you mentioned executive engagement plan. Let's stay with you for a bit. And can you tell us a bit more about what is the purpose of this plan and how did you build it?
Yeah, how did we get to that? So the purpose is to have regular contact between our executives and our customers' executives to really create that strong relationship and the trust with our customers. You know, what we've seen in the past is a couple of things. One is either we drag the execs in when there's an at-risk situation, and frankly, that's too late. You know, it's too late, especially with our bigger customers, to wait until they're at risk to have an executive involved. So by doing it in a more sort of programmatic, regular way, it just becomes part of the habit, and we can hopefully avoid more at-risk types of situations. And what we also saw is, you know, we're a hyper-growth company. In the beginning, as a small company, the execs were really very regularly in contact with a lot of our customers. But as you grow and you scale, they become a bit more distant from the customers as well. You get CS leadership, you have sales leadership. You know, it's a different way of doing business. And so this is, again, you know, it's the drive for this has come from the executives to make sure that they are in touch with what's happening with our customers on a regular basis. So it's a very positive but programmatic kind of approach to having that contact with executives.
And we think about operationally on a day-to-day basis, who owns the plan and how do you execute it?
Yep, so the owner is actually the executive assistant of our CEO. So that's really very helpful because obviously she has quite a high degree of power and influence. You know, the initiative has come from the executive board. So they are bought into this. They've agreed that they're going to do this, and she is driving the actual content of that. But on a day-to-day basis, it's the CSMs who create, you know, customer briefings so that the executive knows what's happening in the customer. That, you know, in terms of organizing meetings and so on, we don't, you know, we're not really involved to that degree, but we help facilitate those types of things. So it's part of our role to do that, to make sure that if anything comes up that is really key, the CSM informs the executive. So not to wait for a quarterly kind of call or email or whatever. But if everything's going fine, it's again just making sure that that's being done proactively.
Good. So there is exec buy-in, which is key.
Absolutely.
And then it's
totally.
CSM informing and working together with exec. Good. Thanks, Shirley. Allison, do you have something similar at SAP Customer Experience, similar to what Shirley described?
I would say we've definitely seen over the years different executive programs launch and probably go in different directions. And it's something that we need to continue putting effort and time into to keep the momentum. The programs I've seen that are most successful are ones where we've almost custom set up the relationship. So really stretching not just into our standard executive line, but even going into product executives, right? Bringing people from our product team in to sponsor accounts that may be going through a complex implementation. Bringing people from professional services like major leaders, again, for accounts going through the implementation journey. Recognizing customers who may have an affinity towards a region, a product, a location, and trying to also custom create those relationships where they truly have more than just the implementation to discuss, where there is kind of mutual alignment. Maybe the customer wants to do some innovation with the product, and therefore partnering for an exec sponsor and the product team makes sense. The other thing I'll say is we all know executives are really busy. So the setups that I've seen work really well is where the CSM may even take some time each month to prepare for the SAP executive some email or information to have an excuse to reach out to the customer executive. You know, I find the relationship works better when it's not just about the project or the implementation or the renewal, but it's about the Australian Open, because we know that that customer is very passionate about the Australian Open and there's something in the news about it. Or it's about, you know, their research journey for their child's college, whatever it might be. I think where CSMs do know their customers well and where they can help their executive within their company come up with more natural and interesting content beyond the project and the relationship, it will help push that executive engagement even further.
Good. Very good. Riccardo, I know that at Sitecore, it's a bit different. So you don't have an executive engagement plan in place. So could you tell us, when do executives typically engage at Sitecore? And I know that it will probably resonate with a lot of attendees today.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as you said, we don't have a formal or a structured executive sponsorship. But for some accounts, we do create executive sponsorship at the very beginning of the relationship, and normally during the sales cycle. And that sometimes, at the beginning of the sales cycle, sorry, and that sometimes get kind of carried through the whole relationship. As a CSM, we probably know that most of the times the executive relationship start when there is a risk, when the account is at risk. And as we discussed, we know that sometimes when there is an executive alignment during a risk, then it normally develop the relationship to a better relationship, and even to a more successful relationship. As part of a CSM team, we normally encourage alignment of executives also during large events. I think Shirley mentioned that a few seconds ago. So during like symposium or Sitecore World Tour, what CSMs do, they identify the priority customer, and then they prepare executive briefings, and then they ask executives to meet their customers. And again, as Allison said, it doesn't have to be specifically the CEO or the CTO. It can be product executives, it can be professional service, really depending on the needs or on the situation of that specific customer. As a CSM, I normally encourage executive alignment with all my customers. So as soon as I spot the opportunity, I always try to find the reason why an executive alignment would be good. And most of the time, a good potential good reason is aligned on the roadmap. And there are some very strategic and innovative customers that they want to push our product forward. So I think in that case, it's very fruitful and beneficial for both business to align and to understand what the customer wants to do with our product, but also how we can benefit from the strategy. And then, yes, I think overall, as you said, the executive alignment starts when there is a risk, but then it develops into something more beneficial for both businesses. And I found that to be very, very good for both my customers and my business.
Good. Yeah, it's true that in some instances it is when the account is at risk. So Allison, do you have an example when you had to engage, but it was a difficult time to engage with a customer, and you succeeded in changing a relationship into a positive and successful relationship?
Yeah, and this is actually probably my favorite question, because when we were prepping, we were actually talking about, like, you know, how do you build these great relationships? Like, where does it come from? And I was saying, like, actually my strongest memories are the relationships that started really poorly. We were brought in because the system was down for a whole weekend. We were brought in because we said we were going to implement this thing, and then between us and the partner, it went off the tracks and it doesn't do anything that we thought it was going to do. Like, these were the situations that I have vivid memories of going in and delivering apology meetings. and having countless apology meetings and angry customers, angry situations, releases that are going to cause downtime during major promotional periods. And it was these conflicts, these crises in some cases, that I actually found when I pushed through it, or when the CSM and the team pushed through it with the customer, we came out the other side with someone who was, I don't want to say in debt to us, but they were thankful and they were appreciative. And those were the relationships that I recall most, because we've gone through a hard time. And some of those customers are the ones that, 6, 7, 8 years down the line, I'm still talking to on a regular basis and just checking in and seeing how their life is going, because we went through something together that was memorable. So my suggestion and feedback would be, don't shy away from those moments. When someone needs to go in and apologize and deliver that meeting, and someone needs to pick up the phone and have the tough conversation, I would say, in my experience, you're the best person for the job, because those are often the relationships that will last the test of time.
Good. I love it, because when you said one of the strongest relationships, that it probably a lot of people know that. I love it. So it does resonate. Shirley, sometimes as a CSM, you can be stuck at a level that it's difficult to reach out to exec. So how do you motivate your connection to introduce you to a senior director or senior level, or how do you engage directly? What would be your advice?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things you have to address. So what's in it for the person who's maybe blocking you getting to the executive, and understand if they're fearful about introducing you, why that might be. They may be worried that they're exposing themselves to risk. They don't want to be seen for something to be going wrong, to Allison's point as well. So it's really helping the person in front of you understand what's in it for them personally, but also what's in it for the executive. Why would that person be interested? And really what's in it just in general for the business. But I think the other piece is to speak the language of the executive, to really do your research and to use that in your emails, not long emails that are pages and pages long, showing off how much research you've done, but really getting to the crux of what's going to be important to them. So, if it's a meeting invitation, not talking about doing, catch-ups or whatever, but really focusing on what is happening in their world. Go and read something in the news, or have a look at what's happening on their plan in the platform, so that you can give them insight that will actually show that you can help them in some way. I think it's just really basic. You have to use the right words, the right level of communication. And that is often harder, right? It's harder to use fewer words. But I think, be curious, take a look at their world, look at the news, look at what they're doing for their strategy, and in any email communication, refer to that. But I think it was also Allison who said about things like the Australian Open. If there's something personal that you have that gives them just a hook that they might be interested, because that changes it from just being a standard email that they're receiving day in, day out. So that's one way. Yeah,
that's a good tip. Allison, anything you want to add on the language we should?
Yes.
Shirley
as Shirley was mentioning, right, the language, and I will say, I think the language sticks out right away. If you are a project manager and you talk like a project manager, they're going to know you're a project manager. So, it's hard to just develop a new language. One of the suggestions I can give for prep is, if you're going to go talk to a CIO, reach out to a CIO friend, right? The person that you helped when the house was burning down, and ask them for a favor. Ask them if you can prep with them. Hey, I'm going to go meet with this other CIO. What are the things you care about today? What's top of mind for you? And the best thing, I even sometimes write down the phrases, the words they use, right? Is pepper that into your language. I think it's probably the quickest way to do a power hour and try to convert this information into your natural language. Of course, read the news, right? Like Shirley said, get up to date on the latest CIO.com, CMO.com, read the articles that they're reading and consuming. And of course, the annual report. If they're a publicly listed company, don't walk in there without reading 10 pages of the annual report. Make sure that you have an opportunity in your first 5 minutes to demonstrate your knowledge of their business, right? Oh, I thought it was very interesting in your recent annual report how the CEO has said that, I don't know, artificial intelligence is a key focus for your business. I'm really interested to hear how your company is driving forward with AI, right? So make it clear that you know something about their business beyond just your account relationship today.
Good. Excellent. Speak the language and prep. I think that would be the key. Shirley, when there is a newly appointed C exec, how do you start the conversation, and what are the key steps with them?
Yes, I think that the key thing is just to cut to the chase. Go to where you are right now. What business problems have you helped them address already? What successes have they had? And also what challenges have there been? And why should they want to continue working with you? And again, that goes back to what's in it for them. What's the next step that's going to take it to the next level? And I think the biggest thing is don't do a product demo. Just don't go there. It's because it's unlikely that they're going to be interested or care, frankly, at that point until they know. Now, they might ask later, show me a little bit more about how you do that. But I think hands off keyboards, just get to the chase. Make sure that you are able to express to them the business relationship and the business outcomes that they've achieved.
Good. What's in it for them? Riccardo, do you want to add anything on this specific situation?
Maybe I'm mute first. No, I guess I completely agree with Alison and Shirley. I think is know the audience. I saw that someone posted in the chat and speak the language and research as much as you can. I think when you meet an exec, you want to make sure, as I said before, that you're very specific, that you can ask the questions that are relevant for them, but also make the comments that are relevant for them. One tip, one thing that I would advise is, as I said before, without being a stalker, but try to understand also what the personal life is. And I made the best connections talking about music and cycling. Talking to executives. Luckily, I'm interested in both, but I think that's a good opportunity to connect when you can spot that interest, because of course the relationship can grow in a different way. And one last thing, when you end the conversation with an exec, try to already set the next action. To say, oh, thank you very much for this conversation. I would like to connect with you in X amount of time to discuss how I've done this, or how this has progressed, or how I put in practice your recommendation, whatever you have discussed with the exec. But try to make the hook for the next conversation, because this can be very useful. Good.
Another good tip, the hook for next time. Good. Let's think about another situation. There are situations where CSM are not invited in the conversation, and we are a bit blocked. So Allison, how do you manage this kind of situation, and how do you get in the conversation?
I'm sure we have all been there, and it can be frustrating. I would say be persistent, know your account inside out. And with sales, I always remember two things. One, time is money with sales. So like often it's the salesperson blocking you from getting into the account. Every time you take a minute of the salesperson's time, you imagine that you're losing them $100, because every time they pick up the phone, they're talking to you instead of a lead. And with the lead, they have a future of pipeline coming in, right? So I always make sure that like my communication to them is valuable. It's quick, it's concise, right? But most importantly, also it's a give-get relationship. Mm-hmm. And when you have the opportunities to give something, you make sure you get something for it. So when the salesperson who's not letting you into the account comes to you and says, hey, I need help from professional services, or I need help with the escalation, you make sure you use the opportunity to get something. One example that I've used in the past is, hey, I'm booking a customer lunch at this great restaurant, and we're going to be networking with CIOs or CMOs from these various customer accounts, and I'd like to invite customer X. I know I don't have a relationship with them. I was wondering, salesperson, if you would like to come along and bring the CIO to meet these other people, right? So now they have a FOMO effect where if they don't come and bring the CIO to the lunch where you are going to be, they're going to miss out on this huge opportunity with 3 other CIOs. So I would say be clever with the way you do it, and be persistent. Don't give up, because I think the timing is everything. An opportunity will come and you'll be able to use it to provide the value. And once they see the value you're bringing to these accounts, in most of my experience, they then stop doing it.
Okay, suggestion is give and get from Allison. Shirley, do you want to add something on this situation?
Yeah, I think, you know, quite often it is the sales team. I hate to say that, you know, it's, we also have obviously blockers within the customer, but quite often, you know, sales see the executives on the customer side to be their contact. You know, they have perhaps nurtured that in the pre-sales period, and understandably, you know, they've got a relationship with that person and they don't want to let go, so they don't want someone else to be involved in that, and for whatever reason. But what we have here at Pluralsight are a strong framework of values, but also agreements. So that's something that we encourage our teams to lean on heavily, is to have an agreement with our colleagues, which is kind of like, you know, we talk about expectations here. If I use the example, you know, I expect my husband to buy me flowers every Friday, but if he doesn't know it, I'm just going to get really angry, and he doesn't know why I'm upset with him. And it's the same at work as well, right? It's if the salesperson doesn't know why this is important to you, and you don't have that discussion, then they don't know why you're getting frustrated with them. So have that conversation, explain why it's important for you as a CSM to be involved in certain calls, to have the connection with the executive, and to Allison's point, show what that's going to give them in return. Then it just helps kind of depersonalize the situation. So definitely leaning on agreements, I would recommend that. And yeah, hopefully your husband or partner, whoever, will give you the flowers as well.
Do they?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ellie. So I saw that there are lots of questions in Slido. So I've got one last question for you guys, and then we'll move to Slido. My question is about the current situation with COVID. So my question is, how do you maintain relationship in COVID time? And to what extent has the pandemic changed the way your relationship with exec? Riccardo, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's more flexible for sure, and there are some benefits. What I found though, that there is the lack of the random encounter with the C-level, or the introduction from your point of contact. As I said before, I work very well with the strategic partnership team in the past, and normally I used to spend days in the office of my customers and meeting different stakeholders, and not being able to spend the time in the office with my customers means that sometimes I miss the opportunity to randomly meet or being introduced to the C-level. But of course, being able to do these kind of events, it allows us to be more flexible and potentially to connect to other C-level, as I'm sure Alison and Shirley will comment on.
So you need to be a bit more creative, I guess. Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
Good. Allison, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I would say use the remote situation we're in for an opportunity. So for the executive that maybe you don't get to see face-to-face anymore, send them a small gift out to the house, right? With a note congratulating them on the go live, congratulating them on the renewal, inviting them to the remote user community. I think, you know, we're doing everything so digital, but if physical items are showing up to the house, it does make a reason or excuse to pick up an email and say thank you, which can then in turn give you an opportunity to connect.
Good idea. Shirley?
Yeah, I think in some ways it's made it easier to get multiple executives involved in calls. It's easier to get people in a Zoom call and to try and get multiple people in a room at the same time in a certain location. So I think it has helped in some ways. It is more challenging if you don't already have that relationship, I think, to do that. But again, to go back to what I said right at the beginning, if you can get them on the call and you can see their personal situation, you know, maybe their kids are wandering in to the conversation, or they're having to, you know, go on mute because there's a delivery at the door or whatever, it makes it so much more human. And I think that's the key piece with all of this, is we are dealing with humans. I think we all get a little bit scared of, you know, execs. They are just people, and anything that allows you to connect with them on a more human basis is going to help that relationship.
That's a very good point. Thank you very much. Now I am going to share my screen. And can I share my screen? Got the desktop. Can you see my screen with the Slido questions or not? I can't see that. Yeah. Good. So the first question we have here, how do you enable your CSM team to build relationship on the exec level? Skill set. So what kind of skill sets does it require? Who wants to start when it comes to building relationship?
I'll jump in. I haven't read Allison's book, that you referred. It's not your book, I know, but that you reference. But I definitely want to, and I've shared that with the team. I think it's going to be really helpful. I think just, again, we don't have a formalized way of doing that, but exposing the team to those conversations will make them feel more confident. You know, I think just being in there, it's not something that you can practice in front of a mirror. You have to be in there. But again, just encouraging that curiosity, you know, reading as Allison said, reading the types of articles that the execs are reading, being aware of what's happening in their business. Those are the things that will give you confidence in the conversation. Because I think, yeah, if you try and do it in a false way, it's not going to help. So I think role plays can go so far, but at the end of the day, it's like getting at the deep end and be prepared.
Good.
Yeah, and I would say other things that I've recommended or seen people do. You can add like some sort of delivery communication coaching, whether it's joining Toastmasters, making sure your presentation skills are on point, you are articulate, concise, to the point. I've even heard of team members who have done almost like a drama sort of coaching, where you actually learn to use your tone, your intonation, your body language, your word choice, right? So, but like to Shirley's point, I think there's almost so much you can do around coaching and preparation. And I think getting a mentor, making sure you have 1 or 2 executive mentors that you are taking through the content before you walk in that door, that you are getting critical feedback about how to be concise, how to deliver it in the best way, how to tell your story in 1 slide in 5 minutes. So I would just say, I agree with Shirley, it's the practice, knowing where your weak points are, whether it's the depth of the knowledge, the word choice, the delivery, and then working to continue rounding out those areas. But like a good wine, it takes time.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. Riccardo, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think practice makes perfect really in this case. And the more you meet and the more you make mistakes, the more you learn really. I guess 2 of the key skills when you meet with execs are also listening and questioning skills. I've been in training to really improve questioning and making sure that you get to the point and you get to the level of information that you want to get from that conversation. So I think try to focus also on those 2, and specifically on the listening one, because if you are meeting an exec and you just think of the next question, it's not going to be helpful when you have the conversation.
Good. The next question from Rory, I think we kind of answered it during the interview about the sales team. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong button. Anyway, it was about how do you work with the sales team and ensure a smooth relationship. Gatekeepers, how do you deal with gatekeepers to executives? Is it something that you want to discuss, or we cover it during the interview? Anything you would like to add on gatekeepers?
Sorry, Alex, just one thing to the previous question, the ensuring the smooth transition.
Yes.
Very important. I don't know if all companies have, and I think even when we have it, it's not always working very well, but handover from sales to CSM, making sure there is a good process in place, making sure that there is a good introduction. Don't let it to be random. Make sure that the salesperson introduces you to all the possible person that they know in the company, the customer, and if possible in person, and then take it from there. I think that's number one for a good transition. That's
a very good point. So handover process with sales, and how do you, during the handover, talk about the exit bit and the stakeholder map? Yeah. Anything, Shirley and Allison, you want to add about how the handover process could also help create a good executive plan?
So I agree with Riccardo, right? Making sure the sales also knows what your role is and how to pitch you, that they don't introduce, this is Allison, she is your support rep and she will help escalate all your tickets, right? So they know what your role is and they can articulate it. They intro you to the right person. The other thing I've seen work really well is if you can partner with the sales team to actually get the CSM intro during the tail end of the sales cycle. Before they sign off and convert. In one company, we had a cycle where we said one meeting internally, one meeting with the partner or implementation team, and one meeting with the customer before the contract signs. Then after contract signs, handover is really smooth. And during those 3 meetings, you got a chance to see the lay of the land and make sure, I think to Riccardo's point, sales has to intro you to the right person at the right level with the right description of your role.
Good, very good. Shirley, anything you would like to add?
I think they said everything. I think that the handover is absolutely critical. You know, there's always a balance between workload for a CSM. So introducing every CSM to every customer during the pre-sale cycle is going to be very challenging. But I think if it's well defined in the way that Allison said, then that works. I think for very small accounts, the reality is it's going to be post-sale. But I think, again, it is how do you position the role of the customer success manager is important. And again, that the customer can see the value with working with you as a CSM.
Good. I think it answers nicely there. Would you proactively introduce CS in the sales cycle so they can also build a relationship? Excellent. We can jump to the question about metrics. So what do you think are the ultimate and key metrics to measure successful exec relationship with your customer, which has really worked well in your experience?
I think the number of at-risk accounts that you have at any time, it's a pretty good indication. You know, and if you're introducing this type of program, set a baseline and then look to see where you land after the executive program has taken place, if it is a specific program. But I think, again, you know, just your renewals is a pretty basic metric as well. I think that the one that it really does impact is at-risk. It impacts that pretty fast.
Good.
What I have seen in one instance where, you know, beyond like the Net Promoter Score or the CSAT, like the customer satisfaction score, I've actually seen a small survey that was used to send out to the executive contact once a month or once a quarter. It was like a short 3 to 5 questions, like, do you feel the project's on track? Do you feel we understand your business strategy? And what was really interesting about this is as the executive received this, then when we went to grab a coffee, 15-minute coffee once a quarter, just check in, we already had what they thought before we went into the coffee. Like, did they think we were on track or not? And what was even more interesting is it often told us where maybe the project is going really well, it's on track, things are progressing, but the executive's thinking it's a mess and we're behind schedule, right? It gave us a really quick temperature check because sometimes the information of what's happening on the ground is not always making it up, and vice versa. Sometimes the thoughts up top are not always making it down. So with how we're all moving towards like real-time feedback, you know, where possible, I would recommend even a micro survey could be useful.
Good. Riccardo, do you want to add something, or we can jump to another question? We can jump.
It's a difficult one. I guess the 2 things that I would measure as well is references. If you measure references from the customer and specifically from the exec, my objectives are always to have executives of my customers going on big stage, as suppose you're talking about the success they had. So probably add that one to the measure. References.
Good. I'll be interested to have your thoughts on this question. Where is it? This one. The one on the SMB. So because we talked about exec engagement plan and probably, but tell us more, Shirley, what was it more about large accounts and how does it work for SMB and the long tail?
Yeah, so at the moment, it is very much focused on the larger accounts. We have just created a what we call a scale team. So it's our digital CSM approach. And as that evolves, I can see that we will then look to evolve the engagement program to potentially that. What we do have at the moment is a marketing email that goes out in the name of our Chief Customer Officer. So that is a regular monthly email that goes out to the people who administer our plans. So I think that's the beginning as well, because it's coming from somebody pretty senior. It looks quite personal. In fact, it's my boss. So when I receive it, I always go, oh, it's from, Angela. So I think it possibly has the same effect with some of our customers as well. So right now we don't have a proactive reach out to this, but I think as we move down the line, we will definitely look to somehow have a digital approach to that exec engagement.
Okay. And Allison, Riccardo, do you have any tip on how to manage the exec relationship with the long tail with SMB? Do you have any plan or any feedback?
I guess try to organize one-to-many meetings sometimes, or like leadership boards or round tables with execs. That could work. But at the moment, the relationship is normally built between larger accounts and execs.
Good.
Yeah, I would agree. User community, one-to-many, it can be quite challenging with that long tail, especially to do it in a way that is organic and customized to each account. It's definitely a challenging point. If someone here in the group has a good approach, I want to see it in the chat pod so I can steal it.
And if you want to know more about exec relationship or stakeholder management at scale, we have a masterclass on the 31st of March with Steve Bernstein is going to talk about stakeholder management, because most of the time we talk about large accounts, but how does it work with the long tail and SMBs? So on the 31st of March, we will discuss that. Do we have time for maybe one more minute? So one more question. Gatekeepers, we mentioned that. Oh, there's a question to Riccardo, actually. So Riccardo, this is for you. How does your partnership team achieve the connection to customer execs seeing they can help introducing you?
So the question is how can they achieve the connection to the exec? So the partnership, if you mean so yeah, I think the question is the team I work with, normally this team is at the customer side. So they are part sometimes of the procurement team, or they build a specific strategic partnership team, which their role is just to create the connection with all the vendors and make it more standardized. So their interest is actually to connect to the execs. And the way they do it is through different levels within the team. They are already quite senior. I mean, the people I speak with in the strategic partnership team are already quite senior, so they have a direct connection to the executives. So maybe my point wasn't clear. We don't have a partnership in the company that talks to the execs. It's more a partnership in the customer that talks to their execs, and they help us connected to them. And as I said, it's not that common. There's only few customers I work with have this team. But you can get all of that sometimes from procurement, for example.
Okay, good. It's time to wrap up now. So first off, thank you so much, Shirley, Allison, and Riccardo. So it's all about, if we want to wrap up, prep. What did you say? Suggestion, a complication, and situation, complication, recommendation. There's a book in the chat about how to communicate with leaders. And if you want flowers from your partner, you have to ask them flowers. So that's what we will remember from this Customer Success Network breakfast. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, Allison, Shirley, and Riccardo. On the 3rd of March, Leaders Lab with EMEA Jazinka. And then on the 31st, masterclass about stakeholder management at scale. So looking forward to seeing you in the community. Please stay safe all, and thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.